Let's bring in Zeidon Alkinani. He's a political analyst focusing on Iraq and the Middle East. He joins us from Doha. Zeidon, welcome back to the News Hour. Will they manage to form a government within that, I mean, this is Iraqi politics here, tight timescale of 30 days?
Well, we hope they would manage to do that, but the optimism, unfortunately, is way lower than the pessimism here. The governmental formation or the negotiations that we witnessed are two different types of negotiations that were taking place since the announced results of the early elections happened. One was between the different traditional political forces of Iraq, or known as the traditional ethnic sectarian representatives of post-2003 Iraq. And then there is the intra-group negotiations, which took place within those groups. And this time of this elections, it is the intra-group negotiations that have arguably delayed the governmental formation, as each group must come with an appointed candidate to their share of the high-profile positions. That is a Shia prime minister, a Kurdish president, and a Sunni speaker of parliament, which we doubt will happen today. The major obstacle to this governmental formation is the intra-Shia disagreement caused by the rift between the leader of the Sadrist movement, Muqtada al-Sadr, and the Shia coordination framework, consisting of the pro-Iran groups, as rightfully mentioned by your correspondent, such as Al-Maliki's State of the Law and Al-Fatah bloc. And they, of course, witnessed a major decrease or electoral defeat in seats this election in comparison to the previous elections.
Now, just to pause you for a second, Zeidon, if I may, I apologise for that. Why is it that they are having such a heated argument? Because it is an argument about this. Because is it partly, perhaps, because there are lines in the sand here that when individual politicians go back home, go back to their constituencies, they can't sell what they've agreed to? Or is it just playing at politics because that's their settled position and those positions will never change?
It's probably the second option that you proposed. However, the Sadrist movement is trying to create a majority government this time. They believe they have the confidence, they have the electoral power this time to create a majority government, which means a government that they would lead, a government that they would unilaterally dominate as the only Shia political player in such a majority government with their Kurdish and Sunni partners. The Shia coordination framework is using their relationships, they're using their powers, their influences within the government and beyond the government to ensure that a consensus government would include them despite their electoral defeat. So far, the only delay or the only obstacle to a future governmental formation we're witnessing is the rift that we're currently witnessing between the Sadrist movement and the Shia coordination framework. The only clear agreement that we are witnessing right now is the agreement within the Sunni bloc. As you mentioned, is mostly leading or dominated by Taqaddum, the current Speaker of Parliament. And there was a minor rift or a minor competition with his Sunni rival, Khamis al-Khanjar. However, they have now created their own coalition. That coalition is unifying all the different Sunni MPs and political coalitions and parliamentary coalitions within the parliament. It seems most likely that Mohammed al-Halbousi will be reappointed as a Speaker of Parliament.
Is it fair, or perhaps to use another word, is it accurate to single out the former Prime Minister as being responsible for fueling corruption? Because there were all those angry, quite combustible demonstrations on the streets over a period of months, sort of turning into being a period of years, all over the country, because corruption, in inverted commas, seems to have been the lubricant at how the country works or doesn't work, and that was why people felt they had no option but to take to the streets.
Well, blaming it on one figure or blaming it even on one political party within such a multilateral complex of an Iraqi governance or Iraqi government is a common thing that different political parties usually use as a card against the leading political party leading the government. However, the protest movement or the political discourse that has been targeting corruption, been targeting the sectarian violence, and been targeting the different layers and forms of inequality that have been happening in Iraq, particularly since the protests that took place in October 2019, they have been very focused on an overarching regime, an overarching system which exists in parliament, in the ministries, in the Council of Ministers. The blame from the protest movement has been very general. It has been focused on an entire regime. Blaming it on one single figure is a politicized method that is commonly used by different political parties to avoid the blame on themselves, whom themselves have probably been in the government, which they blame to be very corrupt, such as the Sadrist movement and many of the other political parties that are going to negotiate or form the Iraqi government this month.
Okay, many thanks, Zeidon Alkinani, for talking to us from Doha.